Welcome to Normalize the Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Regular, and today I'm joined by AUDHD artist activist Matt Worthington. In this episode, Matt shares how creative expression can transform lived experience into art and offers powerful advice for parents of neurodivergent children, helping them to foster self-worth beyond society's perception. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today. Before we begin, I just want to check in. How are you really?
Doing good overall. It's kind of a crazy time in the world, and just trying to remain hopeful and optimistic and getting regulated and trying to use all of that to figure out what I can do to help make things a little less crazy.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same way. And I've noticed lately with everything going on in the world, I've been a lot more anxious in a way that's impacting my ability to get things done. I've been so overwhelmed with what's happening. What can I do? Why can't I do more? Feeling powerless and getting to a point where it's so hard to even, I don't want to say care about the work I'm doing because I appreciate and I love what I do, but have the energy to want to do it because I feel like it's not making a difference in the way that the world needs right now.
Yeah, I think coming out of feeling similarly, almost by sheer will of, well, I can't, being stagnant isn't helping either, is kind of what I've been telling myself. And really just trying to find small ways and using that ripple effect and hoping that through something, whether it's, if it's just a drop right now that can ripple out and turn into someone else's tsunami, whatever that kind of is. I'm really just trying to get back into my creativity. And as I do that, trust that these things that I know feed me and feed my soul and are just a part of who I am that I've been really disconnected from over the last several months, if not year, will lead to more answers, which will allow me to do more and bigger ripples, or however you want to look at it.
It's so important to find that connection to yourself. And I know for you, creative expression and art has been a big thing. And for me, not as good of art, but creating these encouragement cards before bed, just having something that makes me feel like I'm doing something for other people, but also understand the messages that I need to hear and get something out of me that doesn't feel so dark, but feels like hope has been such a big difference in being able to sleep versus not sleep.
Yeah, I think I've been looking for similar outlets where a lot of my work historically has been music related, stuff like that, or it's just kind of going on or that I'm listening to, or movies. And I'm finding myself right now more interested in trying to find similar expression in a similar way where it's mantra-y or something like that, that's more what I'm thinking, what I want to see happen, how I want to feel almost, and using the creative process with my own words and hopes and even fears or aspirations, desires, change I want to see in the world, motivation for others along with myself, like using it to do almost that dual purpose where, yeah, this might help other people, but right now I'm making this to help me. And then there's that secondary plus of, as I share my work, maybe it'll also make somebody else feel hopeful, inspired, less alone, whether it's community building or just understanding that there's someone else going through the same thing and feeling the same thing, having kind of that dual effect of this is for me. And when I share it, maybe there's at least one other person, if not many more, that'll be able to glean their own anything from it.
Wait, that's exactly how I approach the encouragement cards. I love that someone else is also doing that because it feels so validating to understand what messages I need and be able to put it on paper and really see it, and then being able to give it to others. And if that brings them a little bit of hope or encouragement in the way it brought me hope and encouragement is just, it really helps. I really love community. I love feeling like I belong, and it helps me feel like I have some kind of purpose and that I am doing something for others, but that I also feel heard and seen when they're receiving it in such a positive way as well.
Yeah, you get the own benefit of this almost as if you're receiving that card
Exactly.
while passing that same message on to somebody else. I feel like there's so many people for a lot of different reasons right now that are all feeling similarly, feeling similar heaviness, feeling similar weight, feeling similar confusion, anger, all for a lot of different reasons. And something that you and I make to serve a purpose of, some of my work is like kind of like a journal entry. You're just getting something off my chest. And for years, it's getting things out of your head that you want to hear that also turns into that like tangible piece for somebody else. Having, I guess, the relatability, having there be so much relatability to those things right now is kind of helpful in a way because it allows for, I think, more people to feel that impact through their own lens, like in their own reality and through whatever they're experiencing. I might not be feeling the same things for the same reason as them, but we are feeling the same things. And therefore, we can relate to each other on some sort of level. And then that opens opportunities, like you mentioned, for community building, for just even a casual conversation that can brighten each other's day, even through like DMs or something like that, or, you know, providing that card to somebody and potentially getting a response to that. Um, it's a lot of really cool opportunities right now to be creative in a way that's inspires hope and uh, connection.
And the way you're doing it, being able to share exactly what you're feeling in that moment. Like you said, so many people are going through that frustration, that isolation. And I mean, it feels so isolated. Feels so isolating when so much is happening and you're feeling very frustrated and angry, and a lot of people aren't speaking up in your community, right? So being able to have someone who is, or someone who's talking about those emotions can really help someone not feel isolated and like they're going through it alone. Because that, for me, that isolation, feeling like no one around me understands or no one else is going through this, makes it so much harder to come out of those depressive episodes.
Yeah. And that's where I had been shying away from my work was I am still struggling a bit with feeling isolated and am taking intentional steps towards that when I can. But one of those steps has been deciding that regardless of setting that aside to try and re-pursue and get reacclimated to my creativity, because I know that that will passively lead to opportunities to connect with other people professionally, personally, long term, short term, all of it. And that's, I think, the most important thing on my plate right now is trusting that getting back to that self expression and experimentation and just the process that I go through that makes me feel like myself leads to opportunities for so many things that I need and desire that I know will then snowball and create more and more and more of those same things. And hopefully for other people as well.
It's so amazing that you know what tools help you. Like, you know, self-expression helps you, and you have, I mean, a lot of times it can be difficult, but like you said, you're starting it again. You're trying, you're making those steps. But to know what helps is something a lot of people don't know. How did you figure out how self-expression, creative expression would be a good tool for you?
I think falling away from myself so far last year and feeling, literally like looking in the mirror and just feeling like I didn't recognize who I was, or developing just like some really nasty habits that I just knew were making me feel a lot of shame and guilt. And when I looked at the other side of that coin, what are the things that don't make me feel this? What are the things that don't make me feel this way? What are the things that make me feel empowered and confident and connected and provide momentum? And preceding last year, when I've been at my best, it's been leaning into my creativity and my creative process. It's been leaning into doing things that, I mean, even my work around music and artists and lyrics and stuff like that, the style and the process and the experimentation and the final product are expressions of myself, of being neurodivergent, of being, you know, it's just different. I, have been fortunate enough to develop a very unique style, which I also attribute to just that neurodivergency of wanting to see and do things different and always kind of pushing to do something unique. And that pursuit and that experimentation, when it's from a place of enjoyment and fun and hobby and that experimentation part of it, that's when I know I've been at my best because I feel it. It happens very naturally. It just kind of comes out instead of being bogged down with, well, I need to make something and share it on social media and get a lot of likes so I can get a client or talk to these people, or I see other people with more followers or stuff like that. And when I just forget all of that and only focus on doing the things that I know I want to do and make that look like me, sound like me, that's what always rises to the top when I feel like I'm looking for answers on how I need to be or what I can be doing right now to make myself feel grounded.
That is so powerful, that perspective switch of what actually helps me not feel this way, what makes me feel empowered, what makes me feel my best self, and not being so reliant on that external validation from social media, because I know that's my biggest downfall,
Yeah.
is feeling like I have to keep up with posting all the time. And it has to be people engaging with me. And when they're not engaging with me, I almost lower the value of my work. And because my work is so close to my heart, I lower the value of myself as if I'm not worthy, as if my like pain isn't good enough to be able to create something. And then I just feel so kind of worthless and hopeless because I'm so focused on that external, how are people perceiving it instead of how is it helping me?
Yeah. I tend to preach to other people not to do that. It's one of the first things. And I think when I'm at my healthiest, it's one of the healthiest perspectives I keep about the creative process is it's just that, sharing work is a side effect of this other thing, not when I'm not healthy, creativity is the side effect of that pursuit for that validation. And for me, it's reversing it. And it's okay, cool. I'm sharing this because I made it. What do I want to make next? Not what do I need to do to get more engagement next? And it's something that I have to remind myself right now a lot about just to keep that perspective. It's something where at my best, it really wasn't that much of it didn't really come up often for me to worry about all that other stuff. As life ebbs and flows and stressors ebb and flow. And, I've become a parent of two and started freelancing full time and owning a home. All of these responsibilities are just stacked up to where, especially as a freelancer, that correlation of make cool work, get engagement, get client work, stuff like that took precedent. And now I'm getting back kind of to my roots of make cool work, put it out there, and just trust that like the universe and the people that are supposed to see it and want to and recognize my value and understand like what our partnership could be. We'll see it when they're supposed to see it, and will find me when they're supposed to find me. And in the meantime, I just need to stay true to myself as an artist and not worry about looking around at what everyone else is doing and just figure out what I want to do on a day-to-day basis as far as the personal work. And then right now, using that to kind of build confidence and find direction to maybe potentially be pivoting to add something else to my like entrepreneurial side that uh, can help impact the world in a small but specific way.
It's such a difficult line to walk between staying true to yourself and then trying to bring that income in with all these stressors and the financial pressure and eggs being $10. It's so difficult to figure out how can I stay true to myself and have confidence that it will work out for me when I am being authentic and vulnerable, where I'm pursuing my passions. And for me, that's been a big thing of I'm so determined to make the nonprofit work. I'm so determined to show up as I am. But someone pointed out to me the other day, oh, you want to be a therapist. And if you're posting so vulnerably online, some parents may not want to trust you with their kids because you're still going through it and you don't know all the time how to support yourself. So it's like walking that line of I need people to hire me. I need that income, but I also want to be me. And I think there's so much more value in talking about it and creating an impact rather than using my voice, rather than kind of hiding away so that I'm accepted more.
Yeah, it's that shift, I think, from what a lot of people see content creators and personal brands as these robots who show up as one thing in one way, and that's just what they do. And I personally think that somebody who is on their way to and desires to be a therapist, showing that same vulnerability, that same struggle, that same anything that relates to not crystal clear, perfect mental health is relatable. I want somebody that I can have a conversation with who understands what I've gone through, not who has read something out of the DSM-5 and is going to sit there and diagnose me and look at me as a robot, as something that can just be picked apart. I want that person to understand that human experience, that individual experience that everybody has. And when I see somebody having that, that makes me feel more inclined to connect with that person. And I know that I was feeling a lot of apprehension when my work started to kind of get into the activism and like human rights category, because that was something I had never done, but it was also because I was very ignorant. And as my eyes kind of opened up to the world, I couldn't help but have these things come out and thought, oh, this is going to alienate me from people who, this is going to alienate me. This is going to cause people to not want to work with me. This is going to cause whatever. And then also, as I was thinking those things, telling myself, good, if people don't want to work with me because this is who I am and this is how I am and these are the beliefs that I hold, I don't want their money. I want the people who feel this way and see these things and understand who I am and hold similar values, that those are the people I want to build relationships with. And I've been very fortunate through the work that I've posted like that to have found a couple of people that I've been able to do ongoing work with, that it's the same type of work I might be doing for someone else, something that could at some point be considered mundane. And, I think at any point, any entrepreneur, whether they're doing something they love with a perfect client, is still going to sit down some days and be like, oh, oh, here we go again. I'm doing, but I'm able to then understand that what I'm contributing towards and the impact of that, as opposed to just contributing towards paying a mortgage or buying groceries or something like that. I'm able to do both at the same time. That's been a huge shift. And I think, honestly, talking about it out loud with you right now, something else I can then now add to what I'm going through now, which is reminding myself of the value I hold and I've already seen the payoff of being true to myself and what it's led to before. So why would I have any other choice than to believe that that's just what's going to happen again?
I don't want to change myself or hide myself to be able to be deemed good enough by other people. And that's something that's so difficult. And I'm happy that we're talking about this because I think so many people go through this, right? Where they feel like they have to hide pieces of who they are so that society deems them acceptable and good enough. And that switch to activism, I mean, same. I was ignorant to it until I ended up in a psychiatric unit and I saw how many people just didn't have access to care, how many people couldn't afford to be there, how many people, how there were so limited standards of care in there, how I didn't feel like a human being, how so many of us just needed some kind of support, tools, we needed education, we needed the person sitting across from us to understand, to not look at us like that DSM diagnosis inside the box of what our symptoms should be, and actually accounting for all the experiences that led us to be here in this moment in that psychiatric unit, needing, desperately needing someone to make us feel seen.
Yeah, there are, I think it's a lot of people who aren't being seen right now. And I think a lot of people are either recognizing that they aren't seen or that there are others who are being seen even less than them. And I was fortunate enough to go through my kind of rehab at the end of last year, and the space and the education that I got on addiction and mental health and codependency and all of these things were just so helpful in identifying kind of the hole that I had fallen into and had been so desperate to dig myself out of so that I could keep helping and could keep trying to contribute and could keep trying to move things forward. And whether it's something like that, where it was, health and health insurance related and everything that goes along with that right now. There's so much conversation around that, economically, like you said, eggs are $10. Everybody's struggling to afford groceries and decent pay and all these different things. And it is tricky to balance, I think there are parts of myself that I am comfortable expressing and kind of leaning into and trusting. And then there are still a lot of parts of myself that, because of the social media monster and, past traumas and stuff like that, that on a very, an interpersonal level, on a one-to-one or, on a friends basis, it's easy to do. But in the professional landscape or the big, scary internet, there are still parts of myself that I am figuring out. How does this present? The worry of, is this going to alienate me from X, Y, and Z? And I think what I, mentioned just a minute ago about seeing that when I do open a door and let part of myself show, it's only brought in good things. If I continue to do that based off of the things that I've learned and the experiences I've had, it should then hopefully just compound.
For me, there's definitely this fear of how much I share, but how I say it and how I present myself. Like you said, is this going to alienate me? So being so careful with the language and how much I'm saying, how much detail versus how much vulnerability, authenticity, explaining where I am now versus what I've gone through, and offering that story of hope, but also still offering that the struggle is still very real and there's so many barriers in place that are making it difficult. But also, I just want to say it really warms my heart when someone had a positive experience in getting treatment, getting support, because that's what we need. We need more people going for support and actually getting that, getting the information, getting treatment, being able to be set up to thrive instead of being set up to try to just hold on and survive.
Yeah, I was very, very fortunate. I ended up having to leave a little early from my program. But even just a couple weeks, I was there for just about 2 weeks and learned a lot right away. The separate, being separated from getting like sober was very helpful. We didn't have our phones, which I was like very stoked about, and all of that time to just get rid of that habit and focus on myself and process was really helpful. They had a very big focus on reintroducing self-love and authenticity as really the main thing that was going to motivate people to break addictions, have an easier time dealing with mental health and rebuilding positive lines of thinking. I'm really, really fortunate that I ended up where I was, and even for the limited time, it really did have a pretty profound effect. And I ended up coming home through the holiday season, and that was kind of the rocky part of it, was just getting back into reality and being so busy and not getting, I still feel like I'm just now kind of getting over all of that stress and getting into a spot where I'm going to start being able to actually get a little bit more routine and get a little bit more habitualized. It's kind of a struggle for me anyways, being ADHD and autistic, to lock in and build up consistent habits, especially with two girls, two daughters. And right now I am, for the first time, really allowing myself to take things very slow and take the time, I understand what my current landscape looks like, and the responsibilities that I have, and the energy that goes towards all the other things that I have going on, and then try and save some of that for myself and give myself grace while trying to make such a dramatic shift in very slow, intentional steps, which is something that I've previously really struggled with. It's just shift into the highest gear possible and start doing everything right away for like 4 days, and then just go back into, it's almost like there's like a fad diet. It's like, oh, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. I'm going to meditate, get a cold shower. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to read this book. I'm going to whatever. And I do that for 4 or 5 days, and then just blah. And now I'm just taking my time with all of these things that I picked up at rehab and the things I've learned over several years of just kind of growth work and trauma healing, and breaking generational trauma with my daughters, and all the work that goes into that, and all the information that I've gleaned. And okay, cool, what works? What do I know, even outside of creativity? What are some of the habits I have that aren't being an artist? What are the other parts of me that are actual parts of me, and not the things I think I should be doing because they're what healthy people do or should, what are the things I do? What are the things I exist as that make me the healthiest, happiest version of myself? Because that's the person who's going to be able to go out and do all of the big, grand, small, large, whatever things that are going to enact the type of change that I want to see.
Wait, I have to go back for 1 second.
Yeah.
You happy to not have your phone for 2 weeks?
Yeah. I didn't want it. Everyone started getting sick. There was like, we thought it was food poisoning, or I think it ended up being like a norovirus outbreak. And, obviously it's a contained facility. So they started quarantining everybody. And we're like, hey, here's your phone. So you have like something to do in your room. And that was kind of the begin. That was like the writing on the wall for me to get out of there, because I started getting really like that isolation, going from seeing groups and all these people I had started building relationships and like friendships with, and getting support from, just vanished. And I kind of went back into that rot mode that I had been in when I was home, just kind of sitting around, doom scrolling, just not really doing anything productive. I was kind of forced to not be able to do anything productive. But I felt an immediate shift. It was hard. They had phones that you could make calls on uh, between like programs, and before and after the day kind of started. So I, got to talk to my wife every day. We would talk at night or in the morning. I'd call her before things got started. But it really was like amazing to not have my phone on me.
When I was in the psychiatric unit, it was that sudden shift when I got out and I was given my phone back. While I was there, I was kept safe from the world. Nothing truly stressful was happening other than going to groups, right?
Yeah.
Having these activities. So when I got out and there was hundreds of messages of where are you? What's going on? Why are you not answering? All the things I missed online, I was so overwhelmed, thrown right back into that stress. I felt like I couldn't breathe. But wow, being like okay with it while there, amazing. But going back to then what you were talking about before, it is so difficult to really distinguish between who I am, who society thinks I should be, and then what I'm putting out on social media as myself in a brand form. And it's so difficult to be able to connect back to this is truly who I am outside of all these expectations and boxes and labels that are being thrown at me.
I think knowing that and then not being able to do it is the hardest part. for me. I know, I think I do ultimately when I'm, when I'm in full self mode, when I'm locked and loaded, and I'm like just not thinking, just totally present, just having like joy and confidence. I know what that feels like. But when it comes time to do it professionally or outwardly on such a, the internet's like such an unknown. And to throw it out there, there's a lot, again, going back to my neurodivergency, there's a thing with ADHD called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, where due to just kind of not conforming, there's been a lot of opportunities where being who I am has been deemed wrong. So it can feel unsafe, small scale or large scale, to show up as who I am. And that's one of the things that as I've been kind of doing inner child healing and stuff like that, reminding myself that, I mean, we're all born into this world. There's a whole bunch of like made up rules that we are kind of told that we need to agree to. And especially us neurodivergent folks, but a lot of people in general just kind of look at them, especially right now, and are like, why are we doing this? Like, what is the point? Why are things the way that they are? Why are people acting like this? Why should I have to act like this? And I feel like I've kind of pared away at some of those things and been like, all right, cool. There's things in this in societally or interpersonally that I'm just like, nah, can't do it, not for me. But then due to trauma, due to pressure, due to, for finances and income and acceptance and community, there are other ones that I still try to adhere to because I think they're going to bring me the things that I want. When in reality, doing the scarier thing will actually get me closer to the versions of those things that I want much quicker. But, you know, fear and responsibility and those things can be really paralyzing. And the time and energy it takes to really work through that and kind of come up with not a plan, because that sounds really calculated, but I think there are parts of healing that need calculated approaches where when you are feeling calm and confident and safe, okay, cool. These are the things that I need to do when I feel fear. These are the things I need to do no matter what, because they are who I am. They are, you know, determining a set of values and making sure that the content you're putting out or the conversations you're having with someone at the grocery store align with those values. And that's been something I think I had just been kind of flying by the seat of my pants most of my life. I just turned 36, which feels nuts. And I'm like, okay, cool. I feel like I'm finally developing a set of values, ways that I operate, whether it's with my wife or a complete stranger that I know and I can just tell is completely different than who I am. And I want to be able to show up for and as myself in both of those or any other situation.
The world is really set up for what society deems as normal, and there's not much room for anyone who has any difference. So when the world is already set up to reject you and to push you aside, that's so difficult to be able to discover who you are, how you fit in, where you belong. I mean, my younger brother has ADHD, and a big thing was school isn't set up for someone who has hyperactivity, who has inattention. So for him, he was deemed as bad. He was deemed as not good enough to be sitting there and sent to the principal's office or put into detention. It wasn't really how can we adapt to be able to include him so that he can also learn. It was just get him out of the classroom. He's a problem and he's making other people difficult for them to learn. So there wasn't this dynamic to support him. It was this dynamic of something's wrong with you, get out until you can act this stereotypical normal way that a student should be acting. And when you grow up with that mindset, it took him so long to figure out how to make friends because he was so terrified of people. People would tease him for not being able to just learn the way they did. Society was rejecting him as a child, And it wasn't until he was like 18 that he really started making friends and finding a place where he belonged. And that's terrible when it takes so long for you to just have that sense of belonging and being good enough, and then have to figure out who you are because for so long you've been kind of taking and hiding pieces of that.
Yeah, I mean, masking is really one of the biggest security blankets that neurodivergent people use. It's okay, cool. Which parts of myself do people seem to like? Or based off of what I observe other people doing, this is how I need to act in these situations. I went through a lot of my life not realizing that that's what I was doing. I thought the way that I was showing up was who I was and didn't realize or think about how uncomfortable it was making me. And now as I have an autistic daughter, my other daughter is undiagnosed, but is at least something neurodivergent. And what do I want them to learn about themselves? How can I get ahead of, we're not sure schooling wise. I think we're going to be doing probably a combination of like unschooling, homeschooling, something like that, because we want to make sure that there aren't authorities, peers that are making our children feel less than, and then aren't making my girls have to do the work at 36 years old that I'm going through to have that self-confidence and to feel for them to not feel scared to be who they are. It is a really tough thing to, like with your brother, where it not only with just schooling and that structure there does it become scary, but growing up and going into the workplace and not feeling like you can show up as yourself there, or even in friendships, relationships, marriages. There's so many stories I've seen about people who are late diagnosed neurodivergent who end up unmasking and end up cutting their family out or getting a divorce or moving across the country or doing these huge career shifts because they finally have answers and feel empowered to be who they are. And for me right now, there's just kind of parts of that are happening, and then still, these weights that are kind of holding me back almost, that I'm working on just kind of cutting off so that I can just fully, be fully realized and just like march forward unabated. And having my daughters as motivation to do that is a really big motivator. Understanding that a lot of people who follow me and see my work are neurodivergent. I think you kind of have to be a little bit weird to be into what I make, which is cool. A lot of the people who hire me are in, whether they're full-time jobs or they're musicians or artists or other types of creatives or entrepreneurs. A lot of them that I've talked to are like neurodivergent as well and are doing things expressively, creatively, creatively, that are them working on finding ways to express and be themselves. So I think that I've felt very fortunate that me finding this gift and uncovering this gift through the lens of it kind of being coming out of my neurodivergency, being able to meet up with other people like that, and then being openly sharing that that's kind of, I've been very vocal most of the time that I've been a creative that I'm neurodivergent, and I've had lots of people who have like DM'd me or commented me and stuff that have been like, hey, it's like crazy helpful to hear and see an autistic artist or an ADHD artist or whatever it is, because it shows them that there's opportunities for them to do this as well. And I know the confidence and acceptance that at my best, this endeavor has brought me. So to know that there's opportunities to make other people do that, it kind of goes back to that ripple effect where, I help one or more people realize that, and then they become creative and they start doing something and they put that out into the world. And it just hopefully helps, you know, people who are just depressed or neurodivergent or lost find something to latch onto that they can then turn around and look at themselves and feel better about who they are and where they want to go and how to get there.
You are so amazing because it really takes someone to talk about it, someone to really show up and show what they're going through and be able to offer that motivation and hope, but also just be honest so that people don't feel so alone. And I love that you have that plan for your daughter, because without having that plan, without recognizing that, the world can be mean and it can reject you and it can really make you not know who you are and take you away from yourself, but you have so much to offer and never getting to explore who you are because society is set up to honestly hurt people who don't fit the mold. And that's so painful. So I guess as we're wrapping up, I really want to focus on, as a parent, if someone else is listening, they're a parent of a neurodivergent child and they don't know where to start, what is maybe something they can do to make sure that their child grows up knowing that they're valued and that they have worth?
I think the biggest part for me has been learning who my daughters are, releasing my expectations and my generational trauma that leads me to believe that they should be acting or should be showing up in a certain type of way, and then finding the things that their idiosyncrasies, their unique attributes and personality traits and interests, and just fostering that and giving them space to work through their big emotions and teaching them how to do that and finding ways to build their confidence. I think if I've been fortunate enough to be around in jobs related to autism and serving autistic adults and other stuff. So I've been fortunate enough to be informed enough that, I was able to identify that my daughter was autistic at like 13, 14 months. She wasn't formally diagnosed until 30 months. I think working with any system that the public school in your area might have, as far or like infants and toddlers, at getting a diagnosis, finding resources that your child might need, whether it's a speech language pathologist or occupational therapy, physical therapy. Early intervention is really, really great. So as young as you can, just finding resources and things that are going to help them flourish is really important. But I think just building confidence and allowing them space to just be weird and be a kid and be not cookie cutter is just so important to set that precedent as early as possible, so that as they continue to grow up, they just keep doing it more and more and keep feeling confident finding and expressing these parts of themselves that are going to be so different than what most other kids that are their age or in their class or whatever it is that they're doing. And for them to know that they're all right and that they're safe to continue to do that, because that's just who they are. And that's just what it means for them to just be alive.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.